Hello? Hello, did you miss me? In today's video, I'm gonna go over some tips and tricks on how I make my Gelike nails last up to 3.5 weeks without lifting, popping off, or breaking. Although I've done Gelike videos in the past, this has been a highly requested video over the years. This will be a similar format to my How I Grow Long Natural Nails video, which I'll link in the description box if you haven't watched it already. I filmed today's video in increments because I kept thinking of tips to include, and then I would insert the footage where it belongs. So grab a snack and get comfortable. It's a long one. I hope you leave this video either having learned something new or with a bit more confidence that you too can get professional results at home. A quick disclaimer for all of the new viewers. Hi, hello, welcome. I haven't done one of these in a while, so I'm gonna hand it over to Irina of the past. As always, for anybody that is new to my channel, I'm not a professional nail tech. I'm not a professional nail anything. I'm just a gal at home trying to save a couple bucks. I do this as a hobby on myself. I don't do other people's nails, and everything I learned has been through trial and error and using myself as a guinea pig. So I'm not a pro, nor am I claiming to be. If you have zero attention span now, thanks to TikTok, here are some of my tips in point form before we get started. I'll expand on them as I work through the tutorial. Regardless of the shape that you're using, make sure to size your tips correctly and that they fit from sidewall to sidewall. Never size down, always size up if you have to, and file the tip to your desired shape. Prep your tips and your nails thoroughly. I will have a lot to say about this. Don't apply too much builder gel. It will ooze and flood your cuticle, which will eventually lead to premature lifting or worse, a gel allergy. If you have any gel on your skin, clean it up with a brush and a little bit of alcohol before curing. And if it's oozing like all over the place, just wipe it off completely and start over. There's nothing wrong with just trying again. Don't place your tip too close to your cuticle and apply it at a 30 to 45 degree angle. I like to leave a little bit of space between my cuticle and my tip. It makes for a much more natural looking cuticle area. More on this later. Always make sure to fully cure your nails. A flash cure is not enough. And on that note, do not use builder gel to adhere pre-painted or pre-designed tips to your nails. They will not cure properly. Your tips have to be clear in order for the light to penetrate through them to your nail to cure properly. I've seen people on TikTok pre-design and paint their tips and then apply them to their nails using builder gel. This not only doesn't cure properly and will lift, but it can lead to nail infections or gel allergies. If you're doing any kind of pre-design to your tips, you want to adhere them using like a regular nail glue or acrylic. Try to keep the cuticle area natural looking. If you had a little bit of ooze action and you already cured it, clean it up with an e-file or smooth it out with a buffing block or a gentle nail file before applying gel polish. These last few are repeats from my How I Grow Long Natural Nails video, but worth mentioning again. Keep your cuticles hydrated. I keep a cuticle oil pen on me at all times. If my nails are looking a little crusty, I just give them a quick rub down and they look brand new. Do not use your nails as tools. Don't use them to open things, lift things, poke at things. Move through life as if your nails are wet. If you have to, just for the love of God, stop using them as extensions of your fingers. I know it's tempting, but don't do it. Outside the obvious situations, such as showering and washing your hands, try to avoid constant unnecessary contact with water if you can. This one is a very hard one for me because in the summertime, I love to cause a ruckus at the lake. You can always catch me splashing around in a body of water somewhere. I was raised to do chores by hand and I still hand wash my dishes a lot of the time. If you're the same way, but you want your nails to last, start wearing rubber gloves. I know it sounds like a no-brainer, but sometimes you don't feel like grabbing the gloves to just do a couple dishes. Trust me, it all adds up and it makes a world of a difference. Also, this is not an invitation to write me a thesis about conserving water, so please spare me. And lastly, on a more positive note, while Gelike is super easy to do once you get the hang of it, there is a bit of a learning curve until you get into the groove, so don't rush the process. Doing nails should be like a fun, therapeutic experience. Just throw on a show or a podcast and remember that you probably will mess up, but practice makes perfect. There is no shortage of different Gelike brands out there. I own entirely too many, regardless of the shape that I'm using, the brand that I'm using. When I'm sizing my tip, I make sure that it fits from sidewall to sidewall. I shouldn't have to flatten the tip by applying pressure for it to touch from sidewall to sidewall. It should naturally fit that way. If you have naturally larger nail beds and the tip is way too small for your nail, what you can do is apply the tip a bit higher up on the nail, cure it, and then fill in that gap with Builder Gel. Let me know if you'd like me to do a short on this method. When I apply my tip, I like to leave a little gap between the cuticle and the tip. This makes for a more natural cuticle area, especially when my nails start to grow out. If the tip doesn't fit the shape of my nail at the cuticle, I reshape it. For example, the cuticle area on my thumb is naturally more square, whereas the tip is more rounded at the cuticle, so I always have to reshape it to fit the shape of my nail. I do this with a 180 grit file until those little gaps on the sides of my nails are filled in. You can also shape the tip if it's too big for your nail, so just file down the sides of the nail until it fits onto your natural nail from sidewall to sidewall. You'll notice that some tips come pre-etched now, others don't. I always etch my tips that don't come pre-etched because having a grippy texture on both the tip and my nail allows the gel to bond to my nail better. Not etching my tip first may result in the tip potentially popping off because the surface is way too smooth and the gel has no texture to adhere to. So when I'm sizing my tip, I make a mental note of how much of the tip covers my natural nail and I etch that area. There are multiple ways to etch a tip. You can use a gritty cuticle pusher like the glass one that I'm using here. You can use a gritty nail stick, which works the same way. You can use an e-file and a sanding band depending on the size of your tips. Kiara Sky actually just came out with smaller versions of their mandrel and sanding bands. I didn't have them in time for filming this video, but I'll link them in the description box. And lastly, you can chemically etch the tip with acid-free primer or acetone. This has a similar effect to physically etching. And because I think repetition when trying to retain new information is helpful, I'm now going to demonstrate myself actually prepping the tips that I want to use in today's look. So I'm going with a short almond tip by Kiara Sky. I'm sizing them, making sure that each tip fits from sidewall to sidewall, and then I'm etching each tip with my e-file and a carbide safety bit. I'm using this one in particular because it's skinny enough to etch each tip, including my pinky nail. I try to do this over a dust collector because when I'm etching using a carbide bit, it creates quite a lot of dust and I don't want to breathe it in. Another thing I like doing when prepping my tips, depending on the thickness of them, is to give the surface of the cuticle area an extra little buff. I actually did this later on in the video, but it kind of made more sense to move that footage to this portion since I'm etching them. I'm using a Kiara Sky buffer here, and the goal is to just get the cuticle area as thin as possible. Now that my tips are prepped, it's time to move on to prepping my natural nails. I normally like to trim my natural nails completely before applying Gelike, but I also wanted to see how long I could grow my natural nails while wearing this manicure, so I kept the length. I later regretted this decision. I always like to start off by softening up the dry skin around my nails with the Blue Cross cuticle remover. This is currently my favorite cuticle remover of all time. It just melts the dry skin away. I like to use a wooden stick to scrape off the mushy dead skin, and then I'm using a cuticle pusher tool to gently push back my cuticles. I wipe off all that mush with a little bit of alcohol on a lint-free wipe, and then I gently trim off the white hangy dead skin with my cuticle nippers. Doing thorough cuticle cleanup is a non-negotiable when prepping your nails for any kind of nail extension. Trimming the dead skin around your nails is optional if you're not comfortable using cuticle nippers, but you have to at least push back your cuticles, file off any dry bits so that your gel can properly adhere to your nail. I'm lightly roughing up the surface of my nails. This can be done with a gentle nail file, in my case a 180 grit file, a sanding band, or a buffing block. This polar block is far too smoothing, and it will actually make the surface of the nail so smooth that the tip will pop off. If you're going to use a buffing block to do this, you want to make sure that you're using a more coarse buffing block. You can totally see the difference in the coarseness up close. If you have issues with lifting around the cuticle, might I suggest you pick up a glass cuticle pusher tool. The slanted edge has no texture, so I turn it on its side, or I use the pointy end and I rough up the cuticle area, and I get into all the little corners that I may have missed with my buffer. Another option to get into every little nook and cranny of the cuticle area is to use an e-file and a cuticle cleanup bit. This thing gets all of the stubborn last little bits of dead skin around the nail, which may be causing your lifting. Whenever I use any kind of cuticle remover solution, which is pretty much every time I do my manicure, I wipe off any excess oil from my nail plate with my CND nail surface cleanser. Most Gelix kits come with a dehydrator, a primer, and a builder gel. I really like the Kiara Sky system, but if you already have the Gelish dehydrator and primer as per my recommendation, you can just use those and pick a builder gel of your choice. Honestly, they all pretty much do the same thing. So I'm applying my dehydrator followed by my acid-free primer, and I'll be using the Kiara Sky Builder Gel. I apply a thin coat on each nail and I cure in my LED lamp for 45 seconds. Before I apply my tips, I want to talk about flash curing lamps for a second. Throughout my Gelix journey, I've come to the conclusion that having a good, comfortable flash curing light is important, because all it takes is one split second to nudge your tip and mess up the placement and flash cure it crooked. This has happened to me one too many times, and it still does when I'm filming because I'm focused on getting my hand in frame, so I'm not paying as much attention to what I'm doing. I'm just making sure that you can see what I'm doing, which is kind of a problem because it's like the blind leading the blind here. I have several different flash curing lights ranging in price.
I love lamp. I love lamp.
I basically collect them to test them out at this point, so you don't have to. I am not a fan of these little ones that require you to lower your hand and move it forward under the lamp. They're far too low to the desk. I prefer the gooseneck ones that can be moved around and are up higher, decreasing the distance my hand has to travel to flash cure. My ride or die is the Gelish Touch LED, which is my most expensive one. It's that touch activation that really makes it worth the money for me. I can apply my builder, literally place my finger right under the head of the light, tap it with my knuckle, and flash cure perfectly. I also like that it's rechargeable, cordless, and portable. A less expensive alternative is this one by Savvyland. It's rechargeable and cordless, but unlike the Gelish Touch LED, it is not touch activated, so I have to make sure that my hand is slightly above the light when I place my tip, and then I slide my hand under it. Both are better options than the little ones, in my opinion. But yeah, I just thought I'd touch on flash curing lights really quickly because they're not all made equal. comfortable, and there are ones that are better than others. On to tip application. When applying your gel tip, you don't want to just plop it onto the surface of the nail. You want to place the tip near the cuticle at a 30 to 45 degree angle and slowly press it down with just enough pressure to get rid of any air bubbles. So I'm applying a thin layer of builder gel over the etched part of my tip, as well as a little drop at the cuticle. I'm placing the tip at my cuticle and gently applying pressure to remove the air pocket, and then I quickly flash cure. This process, by the way, is 100 times easier when I'm not having to film and be in frame. I usually already have my hand under the lamp when I'm applying the tip to my nail, but if I did that, you wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing. So I kind of have to roll the dice. You don't want to apply too little builder gel because then you'll be left with a bunch of air pockets, but you also don't want to apply too much builder because then it'll ooze out the sides. With enough practice, you kind of start to gauge how much builder gel you require, and if you do get a little bit of oozing and it's on your cuticle or your skin, it's important that you clean up any excess with a brush and a little bit of alcohol or acetone before flash curing. And like I said in the intro, if it's too far gone and it's oozing like crazy, just wipe it clean and start over. Do not cure builder gel onto your skin. Once my tips are on, I give them a full 45-second cure in my regular LED lamp. Flash curing is not enough. The lamp is not strong enough. Its only purpose is to get your tips on, but a full cure in a regular LED lamp is required before moving on to the next step. Honestly, considering I was fighting for my life to see what the hell I was doing while also staying in frame, I would say that my nails look pretty good.
Pretty good.
Next, I'm taking a fine 5-in-1 bit by Kiara Sky, and I'm further smoothing out my cuticle area. This is optional, but I would honestly recommend it if you want to get a really nice natural looking cuticle. It makes a huge difference when your nails start to grow out. If you're scared of using an e-file, you can try doing this with a hand file. Just make sure not to file your skin because it'll end up looking like hamburger meat. And then I'm using my Kiara Sky buffer to remove the shine from the surface of my nails, and I'm using a 180 grit file to file and shape. This next step is my favorite little secret to getting a beautiful natural looking cuticle area. I like to take a little bit of acid-free primer and I brush it over that little space between my cuticle and the edge of where my tip starts. This melts the edge of the tip into my nail. You wouldn't even be able to tell that I'm wearing a tip. I like to do this using acid-free primer, but you can also use CND nail surface cleanser or a tiny bit of acetone to get the same effect. Just don't use too much because you don't want the gel tip to break down. You just want to smooth down the edge. Yep, perfection. I wanted to keep the look super simple and dainty. I was torn between Love Is in the Bear, Baby Take a Vow, and this milky pink rubber base by, remember this brand that I discovered on Amazon last year? Anyway, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the three after a couple coats and this pearly white powder that I'm going to be using over top. I ended up going with Baby Take a Vow because I'm a sucker. If you're new to using nail powder, you get the best application if you use a non-wipe top coat first. Kiara Sky has a rub-on non-wipe top coat, which I've used before, but honestly any non-wipe top coat will do. I'm using the In Hype one. I'm applying a thin layer to each nail and I'm curing it in my LED lamp for 45 seconds. When applying nail powder, you can use the little sponge applicator it comes with, dust off the excess, clean up around the nail with a little bit of alcohol, and then lock it in by applying another layer of non-wipe top coat. I actually just like using my finger and my glove over the sponge applicator. I find that the glove presses the powder into my nail so much better and the finish looks like glass. Sometimes the sponge applicator or even the rubber applicators that some powders come with make the final result look kind of gritty. So if you're having the same problem, try using your finger, and if you don't want to get it all over your finger, wear a glove. I did 2 layers of powder on each nail. So non-wipe top coat, cure, powder, non-wipe top coat, cure, powder, non-wipe top coat, cure. The great thing about doing your own nails at home is you don't have to wait until your nails are grown out and look crusty to redo them. You know what I mean? I could give myself a fill after 1 week if I really want to. After my final cure, I really went to town with my lint-free nail wipe and alcohol, and I removed all the excess nail powder. One thing that drives me kind of crazy, which is why I hate not cutting my nails completely before applying Gelix, is seeing them peek out if I have a sheer gel polish on. See how you can just see my natural nail peeking out underneath? I absolutely hate it. I also hate it when I can see excess builder gel pooling underneath the nail, so I either fill in the gap with builder gel or I take an under the nail cuticle bit in my e-file and I smooth it out underneath, which is what I ended up doing off camera. Here's what they look like after I cleaned up the excess underneath, just so much better. Finishing off with a little bit of cuticle oil and doing the absolute most to get some close-up footage of this finished look. We have now made it to the 3.5 week mark and there is no lifting in sight. My nails are still looking great. I can probably get another 1.5 weeks out of them if I really wanted to, but I'm bored out of my mind and I'm ready for something new. Everything that I used and mentioned will be listed in the description box below. Thank you very much for watching, subscribing, and staying subscribed, and I'll see you in my next one. Don't forget your rubber gloves. Okay, love you, bye.